Welcome to Banjo-Kazooie. Now, honestly folks, I am so excited to finally be covering this game. This is, and probably always will be, my favourite game of all time. It's one of those games that I remember cementing my childhood obsession with gaming, and it's pretty much the best comfort game for me. However, I haven't played it in over 4 years, as I said that I wouldn't touch this game again until I'm Twitch partner. And somehow, that day's here. I am now a Twitch partner, so thank you all so much for your support. That means though that it's time to cover my favourite game ever and to grind all 12 achievements that it has, to ask the question, is it still my favourite? Well, let's find out and crack straight on. Welcome to the Achievement Grind. Banjo-Kazooie starts with a shot of Gruntilda's lair. Inside, the nasty pasty witch herself is hammering away at her cauldron. All she seems to be focused on is being the prettiest person in all of the lands. However, there's a problem. She's obviously not. Hair Talking Cauldron confirms this by saying that the person that is the prettiest is somebody called Tooty, and not being able to deal with this news well, she just sprints away. We then cut to Tooty outside talking to Bottles the Mole. They're having a lovely discussion that is soon interrupted with Grunty taking the child. Inside the house, Banjo is asleep and Kazooie, the sarcastic bird, awakens him to see what the hell is going on outside. We then start and have a word with Bottles, who informs us of the terrible situation that our sister has been kidnapped, as well as teaching us some moves to help us in our quest to rescue her. And folks, that's pretty much the plot. Grunty has taken Tooty to steal her looks, and we must delve into Grunty's lair to collect many an item and to go through many quirky levels, all in the name of saving her. Now before we carry on, I need to let you know how levels work in this. So in each level we must collect a variety of items to make it further and further through, with the most important thing being jiggies. Each level has 10 of these pieces up for grabs, and they are necessary as we need them to finish and complete jigsaw puzzles. Once the puzzle is completed, a new level is unlocked. However, that's not it. We also need to collect all 100 notes that each level has, and notes are used to unlock doors further into the lair. We must find Jinjos, which reward jiggies and are just adorable, and there are some other things to collect. However, the only thing I'm going to mention now is the honeycomb pieces. In most levels there are 2 very well hidden honeycomb pieces, and once you've collected 6, you've got yourself an extra bar of health. Now for achievements, we pretty much need to collect everything available in the levels, and it starts right now, because even though we're not in the main lair, around this little starting area are 6 honeycomb pieces, so we need to collect them first before moving on. And honestly folks, just moving around and hearing the music and the silly voices for all of the characters instantly flooded me with nostalgia and love, and I was so happy to be starting this game. And since I've played this game through maybe 100 times at least, I also remember quite a lot, so consider this a slight speedrun as well. So with that, we soon get all 6 honeycomb pieces and our first bar of extra health, and trust me, we're going to need all the health that we can get for further in the game. But with Spiral Mountain complete, we head into Grunty's lair for the first time. When we do, we see a cutscene of Grunty working on a new contraption that will basically transfer Tooty's youth and looks to Grunty. Now we're inside the lair proper, and the first thing that we do is find our first Jiggy and have a celebratory dance about it. Let's go! But with this Jiggy, we can now find the first picture for the first level, Mumbo's Mountain. We fill in the spot and unlock the door to our first world. Now, honestly, there isn't a lot of plot in any of these levels. They're just small open world sections, and you have to collect all that there is to collect. Now, as you can imagine, there are enemies and traps throughout, but this game is actually really good at ramping up the difficulty. This level acts very much like the tutorial, but once you get to the ender levels like Rusty Bucket Bay, things get really tricky, and there are some parts of the game that are honestly pretty brutal. However, I am getting a little bit ahead of myself. In this level, there is also our first new move to learn. Bottle scatters himself throughout levels to help Banjo and Kazooie utilize their team strategies, and the first move we unlock allows us to run as Kazooie and also be able to get up steep slopes without slipping down them. But most importantly folks, we have our first Jiggy of the level and our first achievement for collecting too, unlocking Get Jiggy. And honestly, getting our first achievement just makes me wanna get jiggy with it. That might have been a risky joke. I don't want to get slapped by Will Smith's legal team. Anyway, we continue the level and meet some pretty interesting characters, like the orange obsessed ape and another pet chimp that gives us another Jiggy when we gift him an orange. You know, the simple stuff. Here we also learn some new powers, all revolving around the egg. Now, we are able to fire eggs out of Kazooie's mouth like a gun, or have a fire out of the much more delicate region. Now, armed in some way though, we can now pelt eggs at the ape until he is defeated, and he rewards us with our next Jiggy for some reason. Now as well, honestly, honestly, within 5 minutes we had swept up all of the jiggies, the notes and the honeycomb pieces that this level has. We just had one more thing to do before we can move on, and this involves working with a friend of the bear and bird, Mumbo. Now around the levels are Mumbo tokens, these shiny skulls that once collected can be exchanged for magic use. Now the magic use consists of this rather sleepy gentleman turning Banjo and Kazooie into items or animals of some kind, and when we take 5 Mumbo tokens to him, we stand on his platform and he turns us into a termite, also unlocking our next achievement for using his magic once, unlocking us Mumbo Jumbo. However, as a termite we can now enter this special little hill thingy and are now able to climb to the top of the tower for the final jiggy of the level, before it's then time to take our leave. Now with these levels, since there isn't really anything plot heavy to talk about, I'm basically just going to go through the gist of each level, a couple of the characters that you meet and a couple of the jiggies that you need. I'm not going to be going through every single thing that happens. So with that, the level is complete, we leave Mumbo's mountain and trek further into the lair to find the next. And the next is actually one of my favourites in the game, but to get there we need to make it past the first note door. Now as I said, I was going for 100 notes on every level anyway, so there's no way we won't meet the requirement. However, just to show you what they look like. But through the door is the next picture and we fill it rather easily, unlocking us Treasure Trove Cove. And here, I had a revelation. Banjo-Kazooie is the reason I have thalassophobia, as the first step in here is to launch ourselves into the water below for a Jinjo. However, Snacker is here to make that extremely difficult, and I remember so well being terrified of this shark. So yeah, thanks Banjo, you bastard. Now around the corner is also our next friend. Well, I say friend lightly, as this is Nipper. He claims domain over the beach, so instead we go to peck his head off. Basically, Kazooie insults Nipper as quickly as possible and now we need to kill it. So we peck out his eyes a couple of times and this scared crab retreats into its shell. When we win, we also unlock our next achievement, knock out Nipper. Oh, poor Nipper, gone too soon. Anyway, we rummage inside its shell corpse for our next jiggy. I've also got to say that this has to probably be my favourite song in the game. Banjo-Kazooie's soundtrack is easily one of my favourites in all of gaming, and Treasure Trove Coves is absolutely one of my favourites, so I was vibing to this rather nicely. Now for the rest of the level, we had a couple more introductions to make. Firstly, we meet Bottles again, who gives us the ability to fly when we launch ourselves off of these flight pads, and we also meet Captain Blubber. Well, blubbering mess really, as he's lost all of his gold. He can't check too hard though, because his gold's in his boat, and we fetch it. We throw it to him, and as a reward, we get gold. Afterwards, we find Bottles again, who this time gives us a pretty impressive jump ability, once again with help from a pad. Now, other than that, there isn't actually much to talk about. The level is much bigger than the first, and you can already feel the difficulty increase. However, it's more than manageable. And not long later, we find our final jiggy after maiming some more marine life, and we're ready to crack on. Now, with that high jump ability, we're able to make it to a platform for the third level, Clanker's Cavern, and we're able to unlock it and head straight there. Now, if I'm being honest, this level is one of my least favourite. I love the theme, but there's just a lot of swimming to do here, and with the very early controls of 1998, it can be quite rough. But here is one of the best characters. After we make it through the weird little staging area to this level, we meet Clanker, a metal fish that's sole purpose is to eat Grundy's trash, and he kindly asks us to help. He hates the dirty water that he's submerged in and just wants us to free him so he can taste that O2. So to do that, we must swim right down to the bottom of the level and swim through this key a couple of times. Now, this was quite tricky to be honest, but thanks to the oxygen spitting fish that's down here too, we're not able to drown and indeed freed this gentle giant. When we do so, Clanker gets that tasty air and we get our next achievement, Free Clanker. Now honestly, this level consists of a lot of interfering with this fish, as we have to knock out its rotting teeth, enter him, and then spend a lot of time completing puzzles inside his guts for all of the collectibles we need. Never thought I'd say that sentence out loud, but here we are. Now also, when I say that this is one of my least favourite levels, I still really enjoy it, just not as much as most of the other levels in the game. It's a fairly smaller map, which is why most of it is spent inside Clanker. God, there's no way to say that sentence without some dreadful double entendre lurking around the corner. But don't get me wrong, this level mixes it up as best as it can, and a group of mutated crabs even do get the better of me once. However, the only thing really left here to say is when we get the next bottle meeting, as when we talk to him inside Clank, he gives us our next power, invincibility. We can use these golden feathers to shield ourselves from any damage that may come our way, and we use them immediately to get past these grinder sections to get to the jiggy. And that's pretty much the level. We jump down the blowhole to grab the last jiggy and move on to the next. We push through Grunty's lair more until we find our next picture and fill it in, unlocking Bubble Gloop Swamp. Now for me, Bubble Gloop Swamp is the first true example of difficulty tweak, as this level is certainly harder than the last couple, as to be expected, but it is still quite the jump. However, here, the first thing that we do is talk to Bottles to unlock some welly boots. These boots allow Kazooie to go through painful water undamaged to reach certain sections, and since most of this level is piranha infested waters which will damage us when we venture inside, it's best to stick to the wellies. Now Bubble Gloop Swamp is also rather rather packed level with a lot to do. First we crack an impossible egg, then we shoot more eggs into a rather hungry golden crocodile collection that spawn around the level. From time trials to waves of angry toads, we do a lot. However, the first unique character we meet here is Tanked Up, who has a bad case of cold flippers, so we must hurt him in order to keep him warm. Once warm, he spits out a present and we throw ourselves down his gob to a rather surprising room. Actually, let me stop right here. I want you folks to guess what is inside Tanked Up. For those of you that don't know anyway. Is it A turtle throne room, B, a children's choir, or C, a beehive? And for those of you that genuinely don't know, I am curious what you actually think it is, so A, B or C, leave it in the comments. You got 10 seconds. Of course, it's the obvious answer. When we enter Tanked Up's stomach, we indeed find ourselves a full turtle children's choir ready for us to earn our next jiggy. And how do we earn our next jiggy, you ask? Well, by murderously stomping on the children in a specific order so a song plays. It is an odd one for sure, however we follow along rather nicely and the teacher gives us our next jiggy. Now with most of the level done, it's time to visit Mumbo to turn us into a new animal to access the last couple of notes and jiggies. The animal we turn into is probably the most adorable crocodile as well. He plods along rather nicely, and with this we get the last notes and the jingo. However, for this we need to come back for the last jiggy as we don't have a power unlock that will need to beat a minigame, so we'll quickly come back here later on. For now, it's time to leave the swamp life behind us. With the wellies unlocked, we also make it to the next picture and unlock Freeze Easy Peak. Now unfortunately this level is my least favourite in the game. I have no idea why, but I always dread this level when I'm playing it. However, we must continue. Now on the way to Freeze Easy Peak, we actually find the next picture slot as well, and since we've been 100%ing these levels, we already had enough jiggies to unlock this one too, opening up the world of Gobi's Valley. Now to start, we only quickly entered Freeze Easy Peak, as in this level is a power we need for Gobi's Valley, and in Gobi's Valley there is a power that we need for Freeze Easy Peak. So we unlock the power here, which allows us to send Kazooie out like a missile mid-flight, and skip to Gobi's Valley to come back here when that level is done. Sorry folks, a touch confusing, but this is the simpler way. So for now, let's skip Freeze Easy Peak and just head straight into the desert. Now starting here, the first thing that we find is a rather dehydrated tree, even though she's surrounded by water and her roots should be doing a better job, but they're not, so we need to find a way to get her water. Now even though Gobi's Valley is one of my favourite levels in the game, it has also been very apparent that this has another difficulty jump, as there is a lot in this level that can hurt you, but it also does have some of the best mini games in here, and I don't know, it's just fun. For now though, it's just time to find Bottles and learn our final move. When we see his mud mole hill in the sand, we awake him and unlock our next achievement for unlocking every special move in the game, giving us Move Master. Now the power we unlock is a simple one. Just like the wellies, we can find some runner shoes around some levels as well, and when they're picked up, Kazooie runs much faster, as you can imagine. It's simple, but it's needed. However fun this level is, it's like what came before. We completed matching picture puzzles, give some more water to the dry desert, and even free a camel in need. He is hot and needs some shade apparently. Important because after saving his life, we have to now violate him instead, as this camel is the cure for that thirsty tree. Gobi is just chilling and living his best life, so we ruin that by ground pounding him on the hump, and he then spits out water for the tree to grow big and strong. And just hurting Gobi the once isn't good enough unfortunately, as we need to do it again for another honeycomb piece, but he then flees to safety in another level. We carry on finishing the level by clearing the block nodes of a sphinx, as well as completing a very scary race, and we're soon at the final jiggy, as once we shite enough eggs into this basket, a local legend extends his snake and we climb on top to get the last jiggy and complete the level. God, that didn't sound right either. Time to head back to Bubble Gloop Swamp for the final jiggy, as we needed the running shoes for this last minigame. In the level, once we are a croc, we can find Mr. Vile, an annoying little bastard that challenges us to a food race. The croc who eats more Yumblies within 60 seconds wins. And with the running shoes, this becomes much easier. So easy in fact that in the first attempt we eat 30 red Yumblies and unlock our next achievement, Chomp Chomp. But with such an overwhelming defeat, Mr. Vile gives us our last jiggy and we move on. Now when we leave, we find our first secret, as when we enter this passage as the crocodile, we meet Cheeto, one of Grunty's old spell books, and since he absolutely hates Grunty, he surprisingly gives us cheats to use in the game, for unlimited eggs and feathers and such like that. However, we're not interested in the cheats, as we need to find this book 2 more times for another achievement, so 1 down, 2 to go. Time for Freeze Easy Peak proper now. When we enter and head down the hill, we find a polar bear in need. This is Boggy, and here a jiggy that we need to dislodge. Now how do we dislodge it, you say? Well, Well, by climbing to the top of the world's tallest snowman and taking a sled down the scarf to charge it directly into his gut, which I suppose is more effective than the Heimlich maneuver. Now, the reasons I don't like this level very much is that everything is slippy. It's simple but really effective, and it kind of annoys me. That and the fact that the snowman enemies on this level are really annoying, and the water is annoying because it hurts. It's just a bit of an annoying level for me, but it also isn't the longest one. After doing all of the things that we need to do as Bear and Bed, including getting Christmas presents collected and Christmas trees turned on, it's time to head to Mumbo for our next animal. The walrus, of course. With this, we are able to cheat a real walrus to gain access to his house to steal his gold, but we also find Boggy again and have a snow race with him. The race is quite fun, to be honest, even though it does disobey all of the laws of physics. However, we win easily and turn back into Banjo to finish this level off. Now, once we turned the Christmas tree on, we went inside and found the last notes as well as the final present for the final Jiggy. So with that, we head to the start of the level and head inside the igloo. With Bogey having a rather bizarre day, we throw the presents to his children, who are so thankful that they give us a present in return, the Jiggy. But with that, it's time to leave. Now, fighting our way through more of Grunty's lair, which is surprisingly massive, we find the next pad to unlock Mad Monster Mansion, another personal favourite of mine. Now, with this level, honestly, there isn't much I can really talk about that isn't just standard platforming. The level is just really clean, has some lovely enemies, and the layout is really dynamic and interesting. We go from stealing Jiggies from sleeping ghosts, to copying magical mystical hands, playing music, to surfing on a cursed Ouija board. Who would have thought it, eh? But the real treat of this level is once you visit Mumbo and turn yourself into the animal of this level as well. And like you can no doubt imagine, the animal you transform into is of course a pumpkin? Wait, that's not an animal. I mean, it's adorable though, so we'll let it slide. But as a pumpkin, we find the remaining notes at the bottom of the well before we then flush ourselves. We hop into this sentient toilet that transports us to the shite room. In here are slugs, death, but more importantly, a Jiggy. Now, we only have one more stop before completing this level, and that's just to throw ourselves down the drain for the last Jiggy. Honestly, this level is simpler than it looks, and even though it's much later in the game, you can still complete it fairly quickly. But that's not a bad thing. As I said, I love this level, and the vibe is simply immaculate. However, with that, we only have 2 levels left now. So heading to the next, we also find our next Cheeto code. Again, not interested in the code itself, but we only have to find him one more time for the precious gamer score. Now, the next pad is fairly tricky to reach, however, we find it and unlock Rusty Bucket Bay, another personal favourite of mine, although I feel like I'm saying that for most of the levels. However, this, without question to me, is the hardest level in the game, so let's get into it. Now, the premise for this level is that it's a docking boat, but filled with sentient pipes, awful goblin creatures, and oil-infested water, which makes swimming extremely risky. Oh, and for some reason Snacker's back here as well, the bastard. But we crack on without regret. Now, this level also did take us the longest, as it did get the better of us a couple of times, but bit by bit we were slowly grabbing notes, Jingos and Jiggies. Now, the first point to mention is that we soon blow a hole up in the boat and throw ourselves down it. When we do, we are greeted to one of the angriest looking boxes in the game. Now, the TNT boxes are mischievous bastards, as they split into 2 smaller forms whenever you hit it. However, with the golden feathers, this boss is hilariously easy, and we soon cut the fuse on this git and claim our prize. Now it's time for the most annoying part of the level, the engine room. The room is hilariously difficult to navigate with all of its spinning parts and whatnot, and if you're unfortunate to fall off, you die. No mistakes are allowed here, and it is hilariously easy to make them. But in this room, we just need to hit 2 switches in order to slow the propellers outside down enough for us to get the Jiggy behind them, and it's timed. But don't worry folks, I'm sure we'll be able to ace it with plenty of time to spare. 10, 9... You mother... 3, 2... What do you mean? Yeah, this level's a cruel bitch. However, we don't give up and navigate to the engine room again, and this time safely make it to the Jiggy. And now going through the level, we was wrapping it up rather nicely, and it was time to save another friend to end it on. This is Snorkel, and he is trapped by the anchor. Fortunately though, it is a pretty easy save, as we just have to hit this button and Snorkel is freed. He swims away and we grab the last Jiggy and go to complete the final level of the game. But wait, before that, it's time to find Cheeto one more time. And once we do, moments after leaving the level, we unlock the next achievement, Cheating Cheeto, simple and yet wonderful. Now once we find the pad to the final level, we fill it in and go to head to Click Clock Wood. Now this level is also pretty difficult and plays much differently to the rest, as with this level you have to play playing the same space but in 4 different seasons. You start in spring and unlock the doors to summer, autumn and winter, with each season having a lot of differences. So for now we head into spring. Now for many who have played this game, they might actually say that this is the hardest level in the game, and I'd understand them saying that, as simply jumping around this terrain is insanely difficult, with many obstacles and enemies. But it definitely is fine once you get used to it. So we start spring by farting eggs into a hole to grow a huge flower, somehow. And we mainly scale the enormous tree in the middle of the map. Certainly difficult, with many easy spots to plummet to your death, but with patience it's doable. Here we also unlock the door to summer, crack another egg revealing a sleepy baby eagle, and make it to the top, unlocking all of the doors that we can. And since that's everything to do in spring, we just jump straight to summer. And loading on in, Eerie the eagle immediately says that she is hungry, and we now need to find caterpillars around the level to feed her. And here we also find a familiar face. It's Gobi again. Now I am starting to feel a bit bad about this, I really am. However, we need that flower to grow, so we give him a slap on the back and he once again loses all of his water. The poor dude. However, to sum up the summer, we unblock the beaver's home entrance, collect enough caterpillars to feed the eagle, and even have a wonderful, if not terrifying, fight with a hornet's nest. Honestly, as I said, the hardest part of this level is just to climb the tree itself, so there isn't really much to comment on between seasons. So let's bounce to autumn. Now here, once again, we have to feed Eerie, and unfortunately we need to assault the camel once again. We jump on his back, and having had enough of us, he leaves the game entirely by heading to the lava world, which doesn't exist. But thankfully we can finally get the Jiggy on top. Honestly, the hardest part about autumn for me was just grabbing the notes from these plants without getting killed, because I wasn't aware that I needed to change to a bee to get them safely. Oh well, hindsight's a wonderful thing. But just like before, we soon wrap this up, so let's get this level done and head to winter. Here, it's basically just time for cleanup, as we first find a grown-up Eerie, and once she flies away, she gives us our next Jiggy. But more importantly, folks, we have some achievements to get. The next is for getting all 100 notes in this level, and by proxy, all 900 in the game. Once we do, we unlock the achievement Music Maestro. And similarly to grabbing notes, it's time to collect all of the honeycomb pieces. They're fairly well hidden, of course, but we eventually sniff them all out. When we grab the last one, we unlock Show Me the Honey, and with that, it's time to finish the game. Now, the next section is easily my favourite part in the entire game, and it's going to make me sound really nerdy. To save our sister, we now have to beat Grunty in a quiz. We have to simply make it over to Grunty's side of the level, and every square we will be given a question or a task to complete. If we do well, we'll make it over and take our sister home. If we fail, we'll plunge into the fiery depths below. Now, I still remember playing this for the first time and being blown away that I needed to pay attention to the entire game, as there is quite a lot to unpack here. But honestly, it is so much fun, and I always had fun with this quiz, from guessing characters' voices to locations from a picture. Now, there isn't really much to say here, but honestly, this is the highlight of the game for me, and was totally unexpected, which made it a little bit better. So let's just skip to the final question. When we pass this bizarrely easy last question, we win and unlock the achievement, the Quizmaster, which I am, ask my dad. But more importantly, we win our sister's freedom from the clutches of this nasty hag as Grunty runs off. We save the day and the credits roll over a job well done. But wait, there's more. We're not satisfied with that, as we need to stop this witch once and for all. Now, unfortunately, this is the hardest part in the game outside of levels, as once we make it past the final puzzle of Grunty herself, it's time for a boss fight. That we reach thanks to the help of her trusty cauldron. But yeah, as I was saying, this boss fight is unbelievably brutal, and I remember so much struggling with this as a kid, to the point I don't think I ever beat this fight. I have since then, of course, but I kid you not, this is a tough fight. There are 5 or 6 stages to the boss fight, and one wrong move and you are dead and have to start all over again. Now, yes, sometimes it was down to my own lack of patience, but with dodgy camera angles and unavoidable attacks, it's certainly hard to chip her away. But death after death, we were making progress, getting further and further into the fight with more health until some familiar friends come to help us. All we need to do is free them from their irksome confinement by spitting eggs into the hole. However, even though Jinjos pack a decent punch, they are no match for Grunty's new shield. But the blue and final Jinjo looks like he might be able to sort this bastard out, as it is an absolute unit. So we throw eggs into it and free the Gingernator. With the power of its fellow men, it arises, it shivers Grunty's timbers, and proceeds to absolutely beat the smeg out of the poor woman. And I really mean beat her. But with one final hit, we unlock our next achievement, Gingernated, and Grunty falls all the way down to Spiral Mountain. Thankfully, a rock smushes her and she is now trapped, hopefully never to be a bother again. Now that Grunty is defeated, we chill on the beach, drinking drinks and staring at some lovely melons. Jesus. But once we load into the save again and go back home, we find a minigame in which we have to complete moving jigsaw puzzles. Now, honestly, these aren't too difficult at all. There are quite a couple to to do, but we only failed once and it was on the final level by a smidge. So we completed every single jigsaw puzzle and unlock our final achievement, Jigsaw Maker. And with that, the grind for my favourite game ever is complete. But is it still my favourite game of all time? Well, let's find out in the next part, as for now, the grind is over. Now, the short answer is yes. This game is still my favourite by a country mile, and I think it always will be. It has the perfect level of nostalgia for me, and I don't think that I can ever play this game and not have a good time. The characters, the level design, the soundtrack, the humour is all absolutely top notch, and it is as simple as that. I don't have a negative about the game. I adore it and I always will. Now, you can call me biased and nostalgia blind, and you're probably right. However, I couldn't care less. Banjo-Kazooie in my eyes is one of the best games ever made and my favourite of all time. So, with that, simply, let's get to the stats. With Banjo-Kazooie, it took us only 10 hours to grind all 12 achievements that this game has to offer. Now, that may sound low, but remember that I've played this game hundreds of times, and even though it may have been years since my last playthrough, it all just came flooding back, and I sped through this amazing tale. This game, as a surprise to nobody, is going to be getting the easiest 10 out of 10 that I have ever given a game. Obvious, but very well deserved. For difficulty of the achievements, I'm going to be giving it a 2.5, however. Most you'll unlock from just playing the game with a touch of cleanup, but none of the achievements should give you too much bother, as long as you have a bit of patience. And for the hardest achievement, I'll be giving that to Ginginated, as the final boss with Grunty is where I imagine most will struggle with. I certainly struggled here. And there we are, folks, Banjo-Kazooie is done, but do not forget to come back next week as we are finally covering Aliens Colonial Marines. I know that it was meant to be today's video, and I am sorry about that, but it just needs some more love, and it will be ready for next Sunday. Make sure you come back for it, as I promise it is a grind that you do not want to miss. I mean, it's one of the worst games ever made, right? Well, let's find out soon. Also, folks, don't forget to come swing by my Twitch as well, where we're live 4 days a week grinding all of your favourite games. It would be lovely to have you, and yeah, link in the description below. But that's enough rambling from me today, folks. Another real quick and massive shout out, though, to all of my amazing Patreon subs as well. I know I always say it, but I really appreciate the support, folks. Thank you so much. Also, if you want to swing by to see about getting some behind of the scenes to the grinds, as well as exclusive votes on the direction the grinds go for, feel free to check it out too. But again, folks, thank you all so much for watching. Have a wonderful week, and I will see you all next time. Take care. Bye bye for now.